Two elderly sisters called Emily and Ruth lived in Folkestone, Kent in southeast England, and were both widows. Although they appeared to have much in common, they also had their differences. They both lived in single-store houses, where Emily lived on the west side of the town and Ruth lived on the east side. Although they loved each other dearly, they virtually lived separate lives, where they liked to visit the museum, but on different days to each other. Ruth would get up early in the morning and walk around Folkestone in a clockwise direction, starting at the old part of town near the harbour and then along the Road of Remembrance and then past some attractive Victorian terraces and then return via Bouverie Street and the parish church and then finish at the old High Street. After a regular morning stroll, she would then teach piano in the afternoon. However, Emily would take the exact same walk in the afternoon, but in an anti-clockwise direction. Ruth considered housework a chore that needed to be completed as quickly as possible, as she had more important things to do with her day. But Emily was a fastidious housekeeper who loved housework and was extremely house-proud, and if she did not approve of certain visitors, they were given short shrift and sent on their way. There was one major difference in their relationship, and that Emily believed in ghosts, where Ruth did not. However, Emily would look at her sister with a wry smile and say, "One day you will change your opinion and believe in ghosts." But Ruth stuck to her guns and insisted she would not. But Emily said it was inevitable. As the two sisters were elderly, Emily was the first to pass away, and that was also when a mischievous spirit would start playing games with her sister. As Ruth was the only surviving relative, she inherited her sister's house, but was in no hurry to sell it, so it remained vacant for many months. As Folkestone was a popular holiday destination, Ruth decided to rent it out as a holiday home. It would prove to be a successful move and was booked out months ahead by holidaymakers. In the beginning, everything went smoothly, and after each renter, a cleaner was employed. However, after receiving the keys to the house, one family complained that they had trouble gaining access to the house as the keys would not open the door. They immediately phoned Ruth, who with a spare key had no trouble opening the door. The following renters also had to call Ruth as they too had trouble opening the door, where again Ruth arrived and opened the door with ease. But Ruth felt the problem lay with the renters rather than the key, as she had no trouble opening the door. On the third occasion, Ruth did not bother bringing her spare key, as she had no doubt that the renter's key would work, which it did when it turned in the lock. The rest of their holiday appeared to pass without any problems. For a time, the rented house was extremely popular, but then problems started to arise where the electric stove failed to work. But when a repairman was called, he could find no problem with it, as it worked fine for him. But problems with the stove continued, and Ruth decided to have a new stove installed. But that too broke down, or initially it appeared to be in perfect working order. Then the TV started to play up, where Ruth concluded that maybe the house needed rewiring. After the lights in the bedroom started to play up, Ruth decided to call the electrician. At this stage, Ruth did not question why all these things were happening in the house. After having all of the wiring checked, Ruth felt it was safe to rent it out again. The next family told Ruth that there were no electrical problems whatsoever and their stay at the house was problem-free. The following families also reported that they had no problems at all. Just to be on the safe side, at the end of the holiday season, Ruth again had the wiring thoroughly checked, where they found no problems, leaving Ruth confused as to why the first few tenants had so many problems. Ruth then decided to put up new wallpaper, and even though she knew Emily would not have approved of the colour and design she had chosen, she nevertheless went ahead. After the work was completed, Ruth went to inspect the house, but to her horror found that every strip of wallpaper was lying crumpled on the floor, and immediately called the decorator and complained. He was at a total loss as to why it happened, but said he would immediately rectify the problem. The following week, he repapered the house, and this time used stronger adhesive. But the same thing happened again, as the wallpaper came away from the wall. What baffled Ruth was that her sister would occasionally redecorate the house by herself, which included putting up new wallpaper, and she had no problems at all. So why was she having so much trouble, and she used a professional? Ruth was now starting to think that her sister had something to do with the mishaps, and would now decorate the house with what she believed Emily would like. So she called back the decorator with a book of patterns and chose the design she thought that her sister would approve of. She chose a cottage wallpaper that her sister would have loved, even though she herself would not have chosen it. It came as no surprise when the wallpaper remained on the walls. After tidying the garden, the house was again ready to be rented out. The first holiday renters checked in, but again there were problems when they found that the external doors and windows were opening by themselves. Every morning when they arose, they would find the doors and windows wide open, even though they had secured them the night before. An hour after waking up every morning, the burglar alarm would go off. The family were puzzled as the alarm had been turned off, and Ruth was the only person with a key that could activate it. If by some mystery the alarm was coming on by itself, why did the alarm not go off when the doors and windows were opened, rather than going off 1 hour after the family woke up? Then the stove and TV started to play up again, and the electrician, in frustration, joked that it seems the house does not like people staying there. However, Ruth now felt it was more than a joke, and there must be more to why all the problems were happening in her sister's home, and she started to have her suspicions. Every morning when Ruth came to reset the alarm, she had a strong urge to open all the doors and windows, as the family were heavy smokers, and the whole apartment reeked of tobacco smoke. She came to the conclusion that her sister did not like certain people staying at the house, especially heavy smokers, and so Emily had taken upon herself to open the doors and windows to rid the house of the awful odour, and was showing her disapproval. In autumn, a businessman and his lady friend, who he called his personal assistant, rented out the house, and Ruth noticed that they wore separate rings and were most likely cheating on their partners. Ruth knew that her sister would have disapproved of this arrangement, and later on that evening, when they'd only been in bed for 5 minutes, the alarm went off. Ruth had to attend to reset the alarm at 1 o'clock in the morning. After checking the windows and doors, she found that only the bedroom had been disturbed. Ruth was in no doubt that her sister had activated the alarm, showing her disapproval. Ruth suggested to have a peaceful sleep, they should sleep in separate rooms, and drove home. However, she was called out the following morning as the alarm had again been activated. Ruth had the alarm completely disconnected. The next family that arrived at the house created more problems when they had not told Ruth about their dog, which they had hidden in the car. The house had a no-dog policy, and Emily never allowed dogs in her house. After unpacking their belongings, the family decided to go out for a meal and left the dog in the house. Upon returning, they found the dog missing and searched the house thoroughly but could not find it. Yet all the doors and windows were closed, so how could she get out? After searching outside, they found their dog sleeping under some bushes. When they picked up the dog and walked back into the house, they found the door would not open and hid the dog in the car as Ruth came to let them back in. As had previously happened, Ruth had no problems opening the door and again expected a troublesome week and prepared for the worst. After Ruth had left, the husband went out to the car to bring the dog back inside, but as he was about to enter the house, the door suddenly slammed shut in his face, and no effort by the family could open the door. They tried the rear door, but that would not open. The only way the husband and dog get into the house was when the wife opened a window, which fortunately for them was not stuck. The following morning, the family woke to find that the dog was again missing, so the husband and children went in search of the dog. However, this time the wife stayed inside the house to ensure that they would not be locked out, but after returning with the dog, the wife could not open the door, and they had to climb through the windows again. As they were discussing whether to complain to Ruth, the doors suddenly opened by themselves, and the son was lucky to stop the dog from running out again. The family worked out that whenever their dog was inside, they found that the doors would somehow open by themselves, and they could find no fault with the locks. But if they were trying to enter the house with the dog, the doors would get stuck and stop them from entering. Someone had to remain in the house at all times. They even tried letting the dog out in the backyard while someone held the door open, but after calling for the dog to come back inside, to their horror, the door appeared to be torn from their grasp as they were holding it and slammed shut. Emily was now being quite vengeful, yet as long as the dog stayed in the car, the doors could be opened. She did not want the dog in the house. The family then tried putting the dog in their children's bedroom and then wedged the door tightly. But later, the bedroom door and all the other doors of the house opened and the dog would escape from the house. After a few days of drama, the family resigned themselves to locking their dog in their car overnight and that there were no further problems. After the family left and Ruth found dog hairs throughout the house, she felt she now had to apologise to her sister, and there appeared no doubt that Emily was showing Ruth that she was still around and had proved her wrong.